All right, so welcome to the spring of 2019. This is Digital Tools for Architects. It's Archi 136. I'd say about half of you I've seen before, half of you are new. That's totally okay. Doesn't matter whether you take 135 before or after 136. Some of you take 135 with somebody else, but you take 136 with me because there's only one section of it. So you get stuck with me regardless. It's always a little hard when I've had a lot of you before because you've heard me talk before, you've heard me say all this stuff before, so just bear with me on the first day. Likewise, you've already registered for the website and that kind of stuff. We do have an exercise today that involves some Rhino work, so you will actually be doing something, so stick around for that part of it. This is a really fun class, I think, because I like it, right? No, because you get to use a great software program called Rhino that does 3D modeling, and you get to use a rendering engine that does really, really good renderings. And so it takes a bit to get your grasp of the whole thing, but in the end, I think you'll really benefit from it. And hopefully you'll never look at SketchUp the same way again, which is certainly my goal. So, a bit about me. My name is Grant Adams. I'm an associate professor of architecture here, which means that I'm here 2 days a week. So I'm part-time. I come in and I teach two classes. I teach my 135, followed by you guys in 136, and then I go off and do my other stuff the rest of the week. So I'm not around if it's a day that's not a Monday or a Wednesday. Email, gadams@dvc.edu is my school-branded email. You can email me there, or grant@digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. That works too. They both get forwarded into the same account, so chances are if you email me, I'll reply from the grant@digitaltoolsforarchitects.com email. I also give you my phone number. If you need to text me, by all means, that's fine. If you text me at 2 in the morning, I'm probably not going to respond. Fair warning, I might, but, fair warning, I probably won't. If you, abuse me and call me all the time, I won't be very happy either, but there are times where you need it, so it's there, and you're more than welcome to text me. My office hours are, and I do this to kind of straddle my two classes. Obviously I have two back-to-back classes, so I don't get to have an office hour in the middle, which would be more convenient for you guys, but instead I do one in the morning on Monday, so I go 6:55 to 7:55 in the morning on Monday, and then I do one for you guys in the afternoon on Wednesday. So that's 2:15 to 3:15 p.m. It doesn't matter which office hour you come to. If you are here in the morning and want to come talk to me, that's fine. Likewise, basically if I'm here, it's kind of like it's my office hours anyway, because you all ask me questions anyway. So these are just the official ones that are actually scheduled versus any of the rest of the time that I'm here. If you really need to talk to me at some other time, just shoot me a text and we'll see if we can connect and I can help you out with whatever it is that you need. DigitalToolsForArchitects.com is the website for this class. It is distinctly not Canvas. So it has nothing to do with Canvas. It has nothing to do with school, nothing. Right? I pay for it. I host it. Separate servers, completely separate. You're going to use this website extensively in this semester. There's a lot of content on it that's been built up over the years. You guys will view your exercises and your assignments that I pass out to you. Course information, course calendars on there. You'll post all of your exercises and your assignments. I'll talk about what those are in a little bit. To the course website, it's like turning in your work. There's also tutorials and video links, and there's lectures, and I try to put everything on there. So there's lots and lots of content for you. And you will also comment on other students' work through this system. For those of you that haven't taken a class with me, don't worry. I will walk you through how to do that when it becomes time to do it. I will publish the course calendar on the website so you can see what's coming. You can subscribe to the calendar so it'll show up in your own calendar. For those of you that took 135 with me, we walk through how to do that. If you haven't done it and you want it in your calendar, I'm more than happy to help you get it in there. Fair warning, I haven't done the calendar yet, so it's not there yet, but it will be by Wednesday. Our class starts at 11:10, and generally speaking, I'm going to talk for about an hour. So it's 11:10 to 12:10 is my lecture time, and then from 12:10 to 2:15 is the lab portion of the class. Sometimes when I'm first talking for you guys, it's easy to contrast between 135 because there are some differences and it's easy to talk about what those differences are. For those of you that have never taken 135, it's totally fine, but bear with me while I contrast them a little bit. For this class, there's much less of me standing up here talking and lecturing and a lot more demonstrating this is how you model certain things. This is how we're going to do this. This is how you use V-Ray, that kind of setting. So on some days, I may talk for an hour and a half. Some days I may talk for 30 minutes. We have to wait for a rendering to happen. So I'll get you guys started doing something and then we'll come back and I'll talk some more. So it varies a little bit in this class. So the 11:10 to 12:10 time frame is kind of loose and it might change day to day. After that, we have 12:10 to 2:15 is our lab time. That's where you're actually learning the skills and practicing the skills and getting stuck and getting unstuck and those kinds of things. So you'll be doing that. You'll notice that this class conveniently falls directly over lunch. I don't make the schedule. It is what it is. So for those of you that get really hungry during class, I get it. Bring something to eat, step outside, have your snack, come back in, keep going. Ideally, if you can make that sometime in between lecture and lab, don't like step out while I'm lecturing, that would be bad. Wait until I'm done and then take a little break and then come back and do your lab exercise. That would work quite nicely. So I get it. I get that you need to eat. I'm not here to starve you. Just step outside and do it. If you want to drink stuff like coffee and whatever, make sure there's a lid on it in the lab. We don't want to wreck the computers. Don't eat in here. Eat outside. You get the idea. Personally, I couldn't survive without some form of caffeine nearby, so I get it, okay? Course description, you guys can read that stuff later. Essentially, what it boils down to is we're going to 3D model in Rhino, and we're going to do renderings in V-Ray. And those are the two big key components to that. So these are the student learning outcomes. We're going to create digital models that explore complex geometries and forms in Rhino. We're going to create digital models that explore non-orthogonal shapes and NURBS. This is like speaking a foreign language, I'm sure. Don't worry about it. Basically, it means we're going to do non-square objects. Okay? Translate three-dimensional digital models into two-dimensional patterns and drawings for fabrication. So we'll talk about how do we take a complex surface, how do we slice it up and make a physical cardboard model out of that. Construct architectural elements using CAD/CAM manufacturing techniques for laser fabrication, kind of in the same ballpark there. We will also do 3D printing in this class, so I will teach you how to 3D print. It's still a little experimental. We're working through that part of it. I will teach you how to make the file. I will teach you how to write the G-code. We'll get all of that down, and whether it actually comes out the other end of the 3D printer, we'll see. Okay, so that part won't be graded, but it will be encouraged that you try. But the fact that you are able to create the code is graded as part of the class. So that's in there. And we're, of course, going to render architectural models using V-Ray. So you can get some good quality renderings out of that. We will be using Rhino 5 and V-Ray 1.5, unfortunately. So McNeil, the software makers of Rhino, have come out with Rhino 6. We don't have Rhino 6 yet. Sorry, it is what it is. We're in Rhino 5. The truth is there's not too much of a difference between Rhino 5 and Rhino 6. So it's okay. If you want a version of Rhino to play around with, I believe that you can still get a student version of Rhino 5 on a trial. It's a 90-day trial, so figure out when the last day of the semester is, do the math. Don't sign up for your trial before the last day of the semester. Okay? V-Ray, however, is very old, 1.5. There is a new version of V-Ray out. It's version 3 point something. I've tried for several years to get them to upgrade our V-Ray. Apparently, they're going to do it over next summer. I don't necessarily believe them, but it's a money thing and getting the licensing. So we, unfortunately, are stuck with V-Ray 1.5. The skills that you learn in V-Ray, the quality of the renderings are still very high. You can still get by with V-Ray 1.5 without a doubt. The only challenge is that if you download and use a trial of V-Ray, or if you find a way to otherwise acquire V-Ray, newer version of V-Ray, which of course I don't condone in any capacity, right? If you find that, you will find that the organization of V-Ray is totally different. all the stuff's the same. It's still the same under the hood. It's just organized differently. And so that can be confusing to people as they play around with it. If it's something you want to try to do, I'm happy to try to help you find where the things are. But I'm going to teach to V-Ray 1.5 because that's what the school computers are, and that's what I'm supposed to teach. So I apologize for that, but it is what it is. I promise you will still get good rendering results out. Promise. There is a textbook for the class, Digital Tools for Architects Handbook. If you already bought this as 135, you don't have to buy it again. It's the same handbook. It will work the same. It has a bunch of the tutorials written out in it. Those tutorials are also available on the course website. There's videos that work with it. So you've got a lot of different sources that are available for you to get access to it. If you can get a discount on it, search for coupon codes, get a discount, please. Grading. This is what everybody always wants to know. How am I going to be graded? So this works the same as my version of 135. Your lab exercises are worth 20% of your overall grade. Your assignments collectively are worth 40% of your overall grade. I'll talk about what each of these are in just a little bit. Your final project is worth 30% of your overall grade, and you have a class participation of 10%. And so we'll go through what all of these mean. I try really hard in this class to have a very consistent workload. So just like 135, it should be fairly even. You should always have work to do. You can do a lot of it in class. That's the way it should go. It's designed to be a companion to 220, 221, those kinds of classes. Okay? So it's okay to be in one of those classes and take this class because it's supposed to be kind of even. Lab exercise. So let's talk about each of these in a little bit more depth. So the lab exercises are the things that you're going to be doing in the lab during the lab period. They're designed to be completed during that time frame, so it's about 2 hours that you'll have to work on it. You should be able to finish it in about 2 hours. For some people, it'll take a little bit longer. For some people, they'll breeze through it. I try to add some variety to it such that there's always something more you could be working on. So it can usually take about 2 hours. If you work really hard for 2 hours and you didn't get all the way done, it's okay. You can still post it. They're graded on a pass, not pass basis. So if you're here and you work for that block of time and you turn it in, you will get 100% for that. That's all it takes. Okay? This is a great way to pad your grade. People ask, like, do you do extra credit? No, I don't do extra credit. Do your exercises. You can get 20% of your overall grade as 100%. That's pretty good padding, if you ask me. So there's your extra credit right there. So it's pass, not pass. You do it, you get 100. You don't do it, you get 0. Real easy. Okay? So there will come a point in the semester where you will forget to post something. It happens to everybody. I would say it's very rare to go through the semester and have somebody post absolutely everything. You forget. You have a physics class. You're running to your physics class. You get distracted, whatever. It's okay. Just post it. It'll be fine. So I understand that you forget. Just make sure you post it later on. You'll get a grade sheet, and it'll remind you that you forgot something, and you'll go ahead and post it. So assignments, on the other hand, are larger and tend to require some time outside of class. So it's not, on an assignment, I'm not going to give you time in class to work on it, though if you finish your exercise quickly, you could, of course, work on your assignment. So you can always use up that extra time. But they're probably going to take a little bit of time outside of class. If you don't have Rhino on your home computer, that's okay. You can use this lab. You can use the lab across the way. And the one in 124 all have Rhino installed, all have V-Ray installed. When we get to some of the final renderings, there's some tricks about V-Ray, and you may not want to open V-Ray in certain circumstances, and I'll talk you through that one as we go forward, because it can mess up materials and what have you. So don't worry, I will give you plenty of notice when that happens, but for now, you can pretty much work on any of these computers, and like I said, if you want to work on your home computer, on your laptop, there's a trial version of Rhino that you can play around with as well. Assignments collectively are worth 40% of your overall grade. There are fewer assignments in 136 than there are in 135. Part of the reason for that is you guys need some skills before I can give you an assignment. I couldn't slap down an assignment right now and expect you to do much. Okay? It would be like build a box or something, and that's not worth it. So your first assignment is actually quite a ways out. I'll give it to you, and then you'll have like a month to work on it. So it takes a while before we actually start having the assignment. It is what it is. It's the way the semester kind of plays out. So we're going to work on developing skills initially. There's going to be probably 4 assignments for the class. So if you do the math, they're worth 10% each. So They all matter. If you submit an assignment and you're really unhappy with your grade on that assignment, you can submit a regrade before the end of the semester, and that regrade will take the place of the initial grade. I don't grade on improvement. It's as if I never saw your first one and I look at it fresh. That being said, if you do a worse job on the regrade, your grade will go down. It's fair, right? And chances are you'll do better on your grade and your grade will go up. So that's there. It's an option. You can do it once for each assignment. So in this class, if there's 4 assignments, you can do 4 regrades. Always worth, doing the regrade if you feel like you didn't do as well as you would like. The other thing about regrades is I won't actually grade a regrade until the end of the semester. And I do this in all honesty because if you already have an A, there's no reason for me to regrade that particular assignment because you can't get a better A. It is already an A. So we don't need to go there. So if you don't, however, if you get a B, then I'll go back and look at all your regrades and see if we can get you bumped up to get that A. Okay? So that's how my regrades work, and feel free to take advantage of those. Course participation. So after most exercises, about half the exercises I'd say, and every assignment, you're going to be required to give constructive feedback to 3 of your fellow classmates using the course website through the course comments section. I will walk you through how to do it. The truth is, in this class, the beginning, you're all modeling the same thing because I need to teach you a certain set of skills in how to model. So if everybody's modeling what we're modeling today, there's not a whole lot of variety that you could really give good constructive feedback on. I get that. So I'm not going to make you just waste your time. There will come a point in the semester, however, where you actually start designing things and making things, and getting feedback is good. When I talk about constructive feedback, I don't mean, yeah, bro, that's really cool, I like it. Like, that's not constructive feedback. Okay? What I want is I want you to actually articulate why something is cool. Okay, that's great. You think it's cool. Why is it? The proportions of the elements and the repetition pattern make this a particularly interesting whatever it is. You follow what I'm saying? So something constructive, something that helps them. Maybe you ought to think about changing your lighting settings because I think your image ended up being too dark. Or, I think that's great, but your HDRI background is too bright. Maybe you should, change the background intensity. Those kinds of things. That's constructive, not, oh, that's really nice. That's not helpful. So we want it to be helpful. I'm going to set you guys up when it comes time to start doing this, and I'm going to remind you when it starts happening that the best thing you can do is when you come into class, you sit down, you turn on your computer, and you write your comments. Okay? It generally takes me about 5 minutes before I actually start class. So in all reality, I'm going to start talking at about 11:15, not at 11:10. So that gives you about 5 minutes. It's really easy to write 3 comments in 5 minutes. You can do that. There's plenty of time. Okay? So if you get in the habit of doing that, then it's not a big problem when it comes to the end. If you don't do it along the way, you're going to find that you need to write like 40 comments, and you have a day to do it. And it's going to take you hours, and you're going to be swearing, and you're not going to hate it. And your comments aren't going to be very good. So we're going to try to avoid that and get you to do it along the way. So I'll remind you when it comes time. We will do a comment all together, one, so you see how it works. But then it'll be a little while in the semester before we start doing it. So just bear with me. This is part of your participation grade. It's half of your participation grade, so it's 5% of your overall grade for the class. Materials. So in this class, you need to have a flash drive. How many people have taken a class? I know a lot of you anyway, but how many people of the people I don't know have taken a class in one of the computer labs here in the ET buildings? Okay, so if you haven't taken a class in the ET buildings, these computers are frozen. If they restart, anything saved on them goes away. If the power goes out while you're working, anything you're working on goes away. These things have happened. Okay, so be aware that that happens, and that's how these computers work. So I would highly recommend you get some kind of a flash drive or hard drive so that you can save your work on those. I also think it's a great idea to back up your stuff to OneDrive. And if you want to know how to do that, I'm happy to show you how to do that. Because the computers are frozen, you have to set it up every time and wait for it to do its backup sync thing. It's still worth it because then you have a backup, which is a good thing. Your flash drive is your responsibility. if you come to me, I'm not going to give the big doom and gloom speech. If you took my 135, I go on and on and on about losing your stuff. Okay? But if you haven't taken 135, this is your quick synopsis. Don't lose your flash drive. If you run over your flash drive with your car, it's not my problem. If you leave your flash drive in your pocket and it goes in the wash, it's not my problem. If you leave it behind here and somebody takes it, it's not my problem. Okay, you guys get the idea? Your flash drive is your responsibility, not mine. Okay? I would say you need at least a 32 gig flash drive for this class. You might want a little bit more. A lot of people end up just using hard drives. You're going to have a pretty large material library that you're working with. Your Rhino files can balloon and get big depending on what you're drawing and what you're making. So space is a good thing. So invest. I mean, flash drives are so cheap. I remember when a 1 gig flash drive was like 150 bucks. And so now it's like they give them away for free. So give yourself a little bit of extra space. It's not that expensive. And a lot of people like the hard drive option, which is fine. Since I've got you here and you're listening to me, a couple notes in this class. When you plug in your flash drive on these computers, pay attention to two things. One, which port you actually plug it into, and always plug it in the same one. I know it sounds silly, okay, but V-Ray will like you much better if you do this. Okay, so plug it into the same actual physical USB port on the flash drive each time, and make a note of what drive letter it ends up being in Windows. So when I plug mine in up on the school computer, it assigns the letter D. It's a Windows thing. Okay? So it's a D drive. That's fine. If I move to another computer and assigns it to be the E drive, it's going to mess stuff up in V-Ray later on. So just know, oh, mine's usually the D drive, because if you move across the way and it doesn't install on the D drive, unplug and move it into a different one until you get the D drive. Or change the letter to be D. Or whatever letter is your letter, if that makes sense. So I don't care what the letter is, just pay attention to it. Okay? And I'll help you when it gets a little bit further down the road. But for now, when you're in class, just plug it in the same one. Pick the far left one, the far right one, whatever, just the same one. Okay? In this class, there are also some physical modeling supplies that you'll have to buy, i.e. like 2 sheets of cardboard and maybe some glue and maybe a knife. Okay? Chances are you probably have that already, and it's not going to break the bank. You guys probably spend more than that at Starbucks. It's okay. But I have to warn you that there are a few additional costs relating to the class. Attendance. So attendance in this class is mandatory. You have to be here to learn, just the way it works. As much as I record lectures and post them online and give you tutorials and all this stuff, it does not substitute for you being in class. And the truth is, in this class, it's even more important than other classes for you to be here, because you will be trying to model something and you'll be pulling your hair out because you can't figure out how to do what you want to do. And it's a whole lot easier to ask me, hey, I want to take this thing and I want to spin it around this way. Can I do that? Oh yeah, it's a polar array. And then you can do it. I can't teach you everything that's in Rhino in a short amount of time. It's not possible. But if you come up with a design idea and you want to know how to do it, there's a pretty good chance I have an idea about how to create it and what tools might be useful. So take your time, come in here, ask me. That's the best thing you can do. Okay? I love it when somebody comes up with something and I don't quite know how to do it and I've got to figure it out. It's pretty fun. So that's part of it. So you have to be here in order to ask those questions. If you're not here, you can't ask those questions. It doesn't do you any good. So I want you guys to come in, turn on your computers, and be ready for me to start talking by 11:15. That gives you 5 extra minutes to figure out your comments, get your computer booted up, talk to your neighbors, and whatever. And then you'll sit down, or you'll already be sitting, but then we'll actually start lecture and demo and that sort of thing. Okay? I will take roll every day in class based on your assigned seats. So next class, this is your fair warning, next class, the seat you sit in will be your seat for the semester. That will always be your seat. That's how I take roll. It makes life way more efficient than passing around roll sheets or anything like that, or calling roll or whatever. So we'll give you an assigned seat. You guys will pick that seat. That's your seat for the rest of the semester, and I'll deal it with you and roll, etc. The way that I do roll is I take it at some point randomly throughout the day. Sometime all the way up until the last minutes of class. The reason that I do it that way is it eliminates you leaving early. Because guess what? You get credit for being here in class for this block of time. You can't leave early and still get the credit. It's not fair. Okay? So you guys have to stay here. If you finish your work early, you guys are all fairly advanced design students, you're going to have other work to do this semester. I promise you that. Okay? How many people are in 220? Nobody? How many people are in 221? A few of you are still deciding. That's okay. If you're in one of those two classes, I can promise you right now that you have work to do. You just don't know it yet, but you do have work to do. So this is probably the one day that you don't have work for it yet. But if you have extra time, by all means, start working on that stuff. Guess what? I'm here. You can ask me questions about that too. If you're in 121, ask me questions about that. That's fine. Use your time and do some extra work at the end. If, this is the next logical question, what if I go have my lunch during class and you take roll while I'm gone? Well, chances are I'll see you when you come back in, or I'll see you sitting out there eating your lunch, and it'll be fine. Okay? I think in this process, I've probably done this for 3 years, so in 6 semesters worth of doing it, I think maybe I've missed 1 or 2 people. And we talk about it afterwards. It's like, oh yeah, I remember you were here. Okay, so it happens, but very rare. So I wouldn't worry about it. The system works pretty well. So at some random point, I'll take roll each day. The other thing that's important is get here on time. Okay, if you show up late, that disrupts everybody when you come in with your bags and all that stuff. So just get here on time. It's not that hard. It's not too much to ask. If you're late, you lose points. Okay, and I'll see you walking in because I'll be talking and you'll walk in. It's pretty obvious when you're late. Okay, so don't be late. This counts for 5% of your overall grade. So this 5% and your comments 5% add up to that 10% course participation grade. It's easy to fluff that too. It's easy to do well in that. So some additional course guidelines. Okay, if you miss 2 weeks of class or more, you're probably not going to do very well in the class anyway. So fair warning, you probably should withdraw or you might get a not so good grade. Okay. The other thing that I think is really important that you guys learn to do is to take some responsibility. If you're not going to be in class, I get it. It's a college class. You guys have stuff to do. Sometimes you're going to miss class. Sometimes you get sick. It's the spring semester. Somehow I always get sick in the spring semester. So I'm hoping that I won't, but it does happen. So what I ask you to do is I ask you to shoot me a text and say, hey, I'm not going to be there today. If you had a job, some of you do have jobs, and you didn't tell your boss that you weren't going to be there in the day, would he or she be very happy with you? Probably not, right? If you did it on a recurring basis, would you still have a job? Probably not. So I ask that you do the same thing for me. It's not that hard. You're super sick. You're stuck barfing on the toilet. Chances are you still have your phone somewhere near you. I know all of you have your phone because you're like checking Instagram, whatever, right? I know how you guys work, okay? You can still text me, I'm barfing my guts out on the toilet. And I'll be like, dude, I hope you feel better, okay? So text me. It's not that hard, okay? You have my phone number, do it. Likewise, if you're going to be late and you know you're going to be late, right, don't do it while you're driving. I don't want that responsibility, okay? But you can say like, you know, Siri, text Grant and have him do it, okay? So just tell me, hey, I'm running late, I'm really sorry, whatever. It helps me. It also helps me understand whether I should wait around for you to come in so that I don't start talking. In this class in particular, if you come in late and I've already given half the demo, you're going to miss a whole bunch and then you're going to be like, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm going to be like, well, but it's not fair for me to sit with you and tell you all the stuff that I just told everybody else because they all have questions. So you go down the priority list. I'll get to you and I'll help you, but it's much better if you're here on time. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Assignment due dates will be announced in class. When an assignment's due, it's due on that day before I start talking. So if we had an assignment due today, which we don't, but if we had an assignment due today, you would have had to have posted it prior to me starting talking. Okay, that's the cutoff. The reason I do that is I don't want you still posting it while I'm talking because you're not paying attention to what I'm talking about if you're posting it. Make sense? So that's how it is. If it's not done, it's going to be subject to the late penalty. Exercises are due at the end of class. They're due at 2:15. Remember, it's a pass, not pass thing. So basically, if you post it, you're going to get credit for it, even if you didn't quite finish all the way. If you need a little more time and you really feel like you want to keep working on it, that's okay too. I'm not going to penalize you for being late on that. So if you need a little extra time, that's fine. Likewise, as long as you're not habitually late with all of your work, if you miss one, oh, I forgot to post that one because I ran to my physics class, no worries. I'm not gonna mark it late or anything. Just post it. Okay? So, there are somewhere between 30 and 32 of you to be determined. I think I'm going to be able to make it work and get everybody in, so that's a good thing. And there's one of me. If all of you have questions, it's going to take me a long time to get to every one of you. It's not that I don't want to talk to you and work through whatever your problems are, but if you spend your time sitting in class doing this, and maybe snoozing a little bit, right? This happens. You're not learning anything. So instead of doing this and just waiting around and daydreaming, right? Lean over to your neighbor and say, hey, do you know how to do this? Hey, can you help me? Can you get me unstuck a little bit? Look online, look at the lecture, look at last semester's lecture, figure out, I give you these resources, how can you get unstuck and keep going? And like I said, it's not because I don't want to talk to you, it's just I don't want you to waste your whole time with your hand up. Spend the time actively trying to do something. So ask other people, do a Google search. Every once in a while, you can use Google to your advantage. How do I do this? Bring the can book. It's nice to make notes. We already talked about that. All work in the class is done in a Creative Commons license, so you don't have copyright to anything. We're not going to have copyright arguments on stuff. Like, you just do your work and we all are happy, right? Fair enough. If you have questions, you can talk to me about that a little bit later on. So late work policy. I'm really strict on this when it comes to assignments. It's important that you understand how this works. The reason that I'm so strict about this is in the real world, you have deadlines, and you can't miss your deadline. If you have a project that's going before a planning commission or a design review panel or something like that, and there's a deadline for 4 p.m. on a certain day, and you turn it in at 4:10, you won't be on the agenda for that day. They don't make exceptions. They don't say, oh, I'm sorry. No, there's no exceptions. You just aren't on the agenda. You can go next time. So that's the way real life works. Same thing happens here. It's a hard deadline. It's not going to change. You're going to be marked late if it's late. If it's 2 minutes late, it's still late. Okay? So if we had an assignment due today, which of course we don't, if we had one due today, and you didn't turn it in, and you turned it in before I started talking on Wednesday, you'd lose 1 letter grade, so 10% off of whatever that assignment was. If you didn't turn it in on Wednesday and you turned it in before I started talking the following Monday, you'd lose 20% or 2 letter grades. So it's 1 letter grade per class. If after 4 class days you still turn it in, I'll give you half credit. It's kind of like a token of appreciation. Like you turn something in, you get 50%. Okay? The other thing about late work, let's say you turn something in late, you got that 10% late penalty, you do a regrade on it, the late penalty sticks. So it doesn't matter, if you had a B and you went down to a C and you did a resubmit and your resubmit was an A, you still lose 10%, so you're back at a B. Does that make sense? So you can't get rid of that late policy. It's stuck. If you don't turn something in, guess what? 0. Turn it in. Did I talk? I feel like I missed something. Like I skipped a slide. I don't know. Anyway, we'll keep going. Maybe it'll come back to me. Oh, it was my doom and gloom speech about this is a college class. Was that on there? I must have skipped over that, right? So for those of you that were in the 135, you heard the doom and gloom speech already anyway. We'll get to student work in a second. So here's the deal. This is fundamentally a college class. Most of you have taken college classes before. At DVC, most professors really like to hold your hand and help you out. Okay? I don't think, and this is again a personal preference, but I'd rather tell you this on the first day, I don't think you should have somebody hold your hand. It's a college class. If you move on to Berkeley or Cal Poly, there will not be somebody holding your hand. I can promise you that. Okay? So, if you feel like you're not doing well in class and you want to withdraw, withdraw. If you feel like, I missed 2 weeks of class, I'm behind, withdraw. Okay? If you get to the end of the semester and you don't complete all your work, I'm more inclined to give you an F than withdraw you because it's a college class. You're responsible for yourself. Likewise, if you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. I don't need to know. It's okay. It's cool. It's right down the hall. You just go. Okay? If you want to step out and have your lunch, great. Go for it. You're really dying today because you stayed up all night last night having a raging party. Oh, lucky you. Go get some coffee. That's cool. Don't tell me. Just go get it. Okay? It's a college class. Treat it as such. I'll treat you with respect. You treat me with respect. Make sense? Okay? Easy. Easy. Likewise, I tell you, I want you guys to text me or let me know when you're not going to be here. If I'm sick, I will find a way to contact you. As soon as I decide to cancel class, you'll get that notification. I don't ever want you to show up with a note on the door. That's not fair. Right? Same way it's not fair for you. It's not fair for me to do the same thing. So I'll hold myself to the same standards. Okay? Hopefully we won't miss a single day of class. That's the goal. But somehow it's the spring and I always get sick. Okay, so I'm just going to flip through some of the coursework. Actually, this hasn't been updated that recently, so some of this is a little bit older, but some of it's still quite good. So these are all final renderings that people did over the last several semesters. It's one of those unfortunate things. When it's in the projector, the dark images never show up as well. So you can look at them after the fact. Yeah, these are all too dark. Unfortunately, everybody likes the nighttime render. The nighttime render is like the gold standard of that's the one you always want to do. So we're going to do that today. Or not today, but not today. At the end of the semester. All right, so we'll end there. So we will today take a quick break. It's 11:53. Let's come back like at 12:05 or so, 10-minute break-ish. And then we're actually going to do some Rhino work. You're going to work with Rhino. In the meantime, for those of you that have not taken a 135 class before, you probably got an email from Digital Tools for Architects with your registration. If you are on the wait list and still want in the class, it looks like, given the empty seats, that we'll have accommodations for you, which is a good thing. I need your emails and your student IDs. So if you could give that to me, we can start the whole registration process for you guys as well. The rest of you come back in about 10 minutes, and we'll go from there. Did anybody have the roll sheet? Perfect. Thank you. All right, so we're going to get started with exercise 201. This is your first exercise. You have a printed version of this one in front of you, or at least you should. And there's also the online version, so we're going to go through that. Before we get started too far, I want to walk through the website so you have some familiarity with it. It is built on WordPress, so if you've ever done a WordPress blog, it works kind of the same way. For some people, it's a little bit confusing initially, but I would say within 2 class days, you've got it down. So I'm not overly worried about it. If you're confused and need some help, I'll help you with the first couple posts, and then it'll seem really easy at that point. So I just want to walk through a few things before we get started here. One other note that I'm trying out for this class, because Rhino has so many key commands and command line stuff, I put up this little gray box at the bottom of my screen that should show whatever I type. It's experimental. I don't know how well it'll work. Technically speaking, the cursor is also supposed to have a yellow circle around it, but you can't see it on the projector, so I might have to change that. So I'm working through those things so that hopefully it helps you guys see what it is that I'm trying to do. Anyway, so in terms of the course website, under the About tab here, you guys are always looking for 136 or Digital Tools for Architects. This would be where the syllabus is. So if you promptly threw away your syllabus and then found later on that you needed your syllabus, you could go back and print it again. It's there. The course calendar's there, and the calendar feeds are all there should you want to subscribe to it and see what's going on. The next tab over is lectures. This is where our lectures will go. You, again, are looking for Digital Tools for Architects or 136. We're in the spring of 2019, so if I were to open that, we get a page here with a link to the lecture for today. There is also a link to my YouTube channel for this class, so you'll see all the stuff, or the playlist. I think it's called a playlist. So you'll see all the stuff coming through. This class, everything starts in the 200s. So your exercises are 201, 202, your assignments 201, 202, lecture 201, 202. You get the idea. The 100s are my other class. So it helps me keep track of them and hopefully helps you guys keep track of them. Once I've posted the recording of the lecture, it'll show up right here at the top of the lecture page. There's also links to previous semesters going back in time. So if my lecture isn't posted yet or something were to happen and my lecture crashed, you can go back and see a previous semester. Sometimes the lecture numbers don't match up, but I try to keep the content the same. So you might come down here, and obviously 201 is always the introduction, but you might come down and see it, oh, it's 227, and then this year's semester is 224 or whatever. It's okay if the numbers are different. I try to keep the content the same, so you can see that. There's also the ability to download the slides that I show. So for this class, it's not so relevant because it's mostly demo stuff, but if I were to show slides, there'll be PDF links to those as well. So that's under the Lectures tab. Under the Tutorials tab, in this class, there's two primary ones that you'll be working with. One is Rhino, and the other is V-Ray. They both are tons and tons of tutorials about how you use specific commands, etc. I've chosen which ones to write up based on the ones I think you need to know most. Those are also the ones that I'm going to teach you. So we'll get that through. V-Ray, same thing. There's a couple extra things with V-Ray. I have a troubleshooting guide and a quick rendering setups. We'll get to what those mean a little bit later on. They're listed there as well. Under exercises, same thing. We have our spring 2019 exercises. I've already pulled up the exercise 201 for today. I'm going to ask that you guys all pull it up as well, because under part 2, there is something that I want you to download. It's the exercise 201.3dm file. I want you to make sure you download that. So right-click on it and say Save Link As. And you can choose to save it on the desktop, for example, today. If you had a flash drive, you could save it on your flash drive as well. We're going to need this file for what we're doing in part 2. So once again, that's here under exercise 201. So exercises, digital tools for architects, spring of 2019. Then you're going to click on the exercise 201, today's exercise. And halfway down under part 2, you're going to right click on exercise 201 and save that file. As we keep going, we have assignments here at the top. Again, digital tools for architects. You'll see that there isn't a spring 2019 yet. That's because there hasn't been an assignment yet. So nothing for you to worry about there just yet. Resources here. There's a couple things that are important for you guys going forward. We have the Rhino blocks library of things that other people have made that you guys can use, which is good. We have the V-Ray quick rendering setups, which you will get into a little bit later on in the class. And we also have the V-Ray materials library, which is something that will be very useful to you as well. And I'll have you guys download that next class so you have it kind of ready to go. Student work, this is where your student work will appear. So we went to Digital Tools for Architects 136, and we went to exercise 201. All the work that you post today will show up here in this, assuming you categorize things correctly. There you go, there's a bunch of examples. And so that's also where you'll go to find work to comment on, etc. The assignments are also there. You can see previous semester's assignments for what people have done, etc. And then obviously the last button is log in. It appears that most of you have already figured out how to log in. If you already have an account, that's great. Otherwise, you should have received an email with a temporary password. You can change your password if you want. So once you're logged in, you'll see the black bar that goes across the top of the page here. If you go to the Digital Tools for Architects and Designers here and go to Dashboard, that then brings up the dashboard here. If you go to Profile and scroll down, you can change things like your name, your nickname, how you want people to view your name when you make posts, etc. You can change your email if you wanted to, and ultimately you can come down here to generate password. It loves to generate a nice strong random password, which if you listen to my passwords lecture is a good thing. But if you want to make it something simpler, you could say, my dog 123 or whatever. When you do something that's very weak like this, it's going to make you check the box to confirm the use of a weak password if you want it something like that. And then you can click on Update Profile. Obviously, I'm not going to update my password to my dog 123. But it lets you guys change that if you want to going forward. The rest of this isn't too important for right now, but I wanted to point out how you would change your password if you want to from there. So we'll come back a little bit later on in the class and I'll show you how to make your first post. But in the meantime, we're actually going to start some work in Rhino. I like to get your feet wet on the first day so you can kind of see what it's like and see the modeling space a little bit more. So I went ahead and I downloaded that exercise 201 file and I put it on my desktop. It's right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and double click on that exercise 201 file and open it up. If it asks you which version to open, pick the Rhino 64-bit version. I don't know why it asks that question, but we want the Rhino 64-bit. And there we go. So I'm going to walk you through the Rhino workspace a little bit so you understand what's going on here. I think the easiest thing to describe Rhino is that Rhino is what AutoCAD should be in 3 dimensions. So how many people worked in AutoCAD before? How many people feel comfortable in AutoCAD? Okay, if you feel real comfortable in AutoCAD, chances are Rhino will be really easy for you to pick up. There's a few different commands, but most of it's the same. And so that's a good thing. So we're going to start today working through Rhino, and I want to kind of introduce Rhino as a concept. At the top, we have our traditional file menu structure. Almost all the commands are available from this menu structure, though it's a little bit slow to access commands that way. But if we were working with curves, for example, all of the different types of curves and curve-related tools are there. We then move over into surfaces. These are all surfaces, and then finally into solids. You'll be working with a lot of those different tools as we go forward. Likewise, transform has all of the standard stuff you would think, like move and copy and rotate and that sort of thing as well. So we'll get into those a little bit more carefully. Below that, we have the command line. This works a lot like AutoCAD. This is part of the similarity between this and AutoCAD, which allows us to type in specific commands. So if you wanted to draw a line, you could type in line, for example, followed by enter, and that would initiate the line command. The faster you get at modeling, the more command line you will tend to use. There are some things that I still pick buttons for or still pick from the menu, but most of my workflow is through the command line. It's not expected that you suddenly memorize, hundreds of thousands of commands and work really fast. It takes time to actually learn the program and to work with it. So using the buttons is not a bad thing. So don't be afraid of those or the menu structure as well. When I'm talking through a particular demo, I will switch my various ways of describing what it is that I'm doing. A lot of times I'll tell you, you can type line, you could click this button, or you could go up to the curve and choose line from that menu. So I'll go through the various ways you can initiate that particular command. Likewise, when I'm doing demonstrations, I tend to go much, much slower than I would actually model if I were modeling it. So that takes time and takes practice. I've been working in Rhino for 15 years-ish. So Rhino's kind of second nature for me. So it's been a while. I don't think I worked on Rhino 1. I think I worked on Rhino 2 is when I first learned Rhino. So I've been around in Rhino for quite a while. So below that, we have a set of ribbon tools. This is kind of like the ribbon tools in AutoCAD. By default, it comes up with this new in version 5. It's not really new anymore because version 5 is not new. But I would click back over to the standard tab. And I think that's going to be the bulk of what you need, is to stick with standard. So we'll make that the active tab. It gives us a variety of tools available here at the top. And likewise changes our primary tool palette here to include most of the tools you'll use on a regular basis. So that's a good thing. Like I said, there's your primary toolbar with most of the tools that you'll use. Opposite of that, on the other side of the page here, we have several different windows that are available to us. The first one is properties. This tells us information about a given object that we have selected. Next over, we have our layers. We'll talk extensively about layers and how to organize your files as we go forward. There are also some other things, like this is display. I don't think I've ever used anything in this at all, but it's there. And likewise, there's also a help. So if you run into trouble, you can search help for that as well. So I'm going to jump back over to the properties here. Down at the very bottom of the page here, we've got a few other things that are important. As we come across here, there should be something that says inches. If it says millimeters, you're not in the correct units by default. Because I gave you a file and you are going to start working on that file, it should already be in inches. That's the advantage. If you started with a brand new file and didn't open the file that I gave you, you're not going to end up in the correct units. So if you're not in the correct units, it is as simple as typing units followed by enter. And then you can change your document properties here, your model units, to something else. Okay? Truth, though, is for this particular exercise, I would encourage you to download the file that I already gave you because it has some stuff set up, like some lights and whatever that you're not going to set up. I'm not going to teach you how to set up, but it'll make your end renderings a little bit nicer to have them already set up. So now we talk about the primary. Oh, sorry, I've got to go across the bottom here. There are a few other things here. There is a grid snap if you wanted to snap to the grid points. I personally don't really ever turn it on. Ortho restricts your lines to be straight, north, south, east, and west, so you're not going to go off at an angle. We'll skip over planar for right now. Object snap is an important one. We're actually going to turn that on. So I'm going to click on object snap, and when I click on that, it gives me a bunch of checkboxes down here at the bottom. And I know this is one of those hard things because it's right behind my head. But it's there, I promise. And I want you, while we're here, to go ahead and check end, mid, and perp. So it's end for endpoint, mid for midpoint, and perp is perpendicular. So your lines will always snap to being perpendicular to each other. Those are the three that I tend to have on by default. Stay away, by the way, from the near one, as it tends to mess you up when in doubt. And there's times and places where the other ones will be advantageous as well. And I'll tell you when to turn them on and when to turn them off. There is also a checkbox to disable all of them. So if you find that you want to disable all your snaps for a little while, you can check that box and it'll turn them all off and turn them back on. Makes life a little bit easy. So that's up. I've checked end, mid, and perpendicular. The next button is already on. It's called Smart Tracking. You're going to want that on. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about what Smart Tracking is next class. So just leave that on. The gumball is something we'll visit a little bit later on in the semester, so we'll leave that off for right now. And I'm not going to worry about recording my history, etc. So that brings us all the way around the screen, and you see that I've completely ignored the middle of the screen, the workspace itself. Now it's time to start talking about the workspace. So this is where we're going to actually do our modeling. We have our standard views currently enabled. So we have our top view, our front view, and our right side view. If you guys took 130, you probably did drawings where you did top, front, and right side and understood that there was a relationship between those three. And then our upper right corner here, we have our perspective view. Sometimes when you're modeling in Rhino, it's useful to use all the views. Rhino allows you to switch between views interchangeably by just moving the mouse from one view to the other. So it makes life pretty easy. There are times, however, when we want to model and we want just one view showing. We don't want all four views. It's really easy to do that as well. If I come up to where it says perspective here, for example, the name of the view, if I were to double click on that, it will make the perspective view take the whole screen. If I double click on it again, we'll get back to where we have all four views. Likewise, if I was in the right view, I could double click and make the right view the active view. We're going to stick today with making the perspective view the large view. And in the perspective view, I already have a couple things set up for you. I have what's called an infinite plane, which is i.e. the ground. That's there. There's also a little light that's been installed. That's just going to help your renderings a little bit. I will teach you how to create these, but it's not really important yet for you to learn that. So I've given you the file with those already created. A couple other things about navigating inside of Rhino. Zooming in and zooming out is as simple as your scroll wheel. You'll get used to that over time. And if you right-click, you will start an orbit to be able to move around your objects. If you go back into SketchUp, it will totally mess you up because it's not right-click to orbit in SketchUp. It's a middle mouse to orbit. So, fair warning, you'll start to get messed up. I have to go back and forth in the semester between SketchUp and Rhino, and it messes me up all the time. So, you'll just get used to it. Right-click and hold to orbit, and that lets you move around your particular object. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit, and we're going to actually start to create something from scratch. So if you flip your handout over, there's a Rhino 5.2 Simple Shapes. That's what we're going to be working with today. So the truth about this shape that we're going to build, I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to create it for you. And I'll probably do it 3 or 4 times going through it, because as we go through it, you guys will be following along, and then suddenly you'll get lost. And it's OK. Just hang tight. Let me get through the whole explanation. We'll go back and do it again. For you guys, I'd like you to create it several times, because it doesn't hurt to keep practicing. The other thing about Rhino is there's not just one way to create a given shape. So you could end up creating a shape 5 different ways, and that's OK. So sometimes I vary what commands I'm showing you, just so you can see that there's alternatives to how you create certain shapes. That's normal. You will learn how you model and the kinds of tools you tend to use. And that's part of learning to model, and it's part of practicing. So the other thing about this shape is it's probably going to take you 40 minutes to an hour to create this shape today, as we go through it and we walk through it and we practice on it. At the end of the semester, and I've always threatened to give people this just for fun, at the end of the semester, I would say this shape would take you less than 10 seconds to build. You will be that much faster. So it's OK. It just takes time and practice. Some of you will breeze through this today. That's OK, too. I understand that. OK? So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how to go ahead and make this shape. So we're going to skip over step 1 and step 2, because I already gave you a file, so we don't have to worry about it. We're going to use step 3. We're going to start on that step 3. And I'm going to start by choosing the rectangle corner-to-corner tool, which is available over here. It's the fourth one down on the right side of my double-sided column here. And so I'll pick rectangle corner-to-corner. And when I click on that, it's going to, up here in the command line, it's going to ask me for the first corner of my rectangle. Okay? Notice also that above that it says command rectangle. So if I didn't pick the rectangle corner to corner, I could also type in rectangle, and there it is. Rhino also autofills as you type. So as I start to type, oops. Yep, sorry about that. That happened before. Yeah, I get it. I can't hit backspace so many times. It freaks out. And then my mouse works really slow. Yes, come on, close program. I'm still working through this. I might try a different one next class. All right, well, you don't get the key commands anymore. I'm working through that. It's experimental, right? Bear with me. OK, so anyway, you could type rectangle. And as I start to type, R-E-C-T, there it is, rectangle. So it's auto-filling for me as I start to go through. And chances are the commands are fairly close. I want to draw a rectangle. The command's probably rectangle. Okay? So I'll go ahead and hit enter there. Same thing, first corner of rectangle. So I want the rectangle to start right here at the origin, right at 0, 0. I could try to click right on that cross, but I'm never going to be that accurate. So if I want to be accurate, I can go ahead and just type in 0, 0. And so you'll notice on the command here, on step 3, I have 0, 0, 0 as my coordinates. We'll talk extensively about coordinates. The third 0 is in the vertical direction, so it's just saying flat on the ground. It's assumed that it would be flat on the ground. So if I just did 0, 0, Rhino would assume that I mean flat on the ground. Okay, I'm just showing you that. So 0, 0, 0. I'll go ahead and hit the enter key on the keyboard. There it is. And then it's going to ask me for the other corner or length. So I've got some options here. So the other corner would be 5 feet by 5 feet. So to put that in, I'm going to type the 5, and I'm going to put the apostrophe sign, which is right next to the enter key, and then I'll put a comma and then 5 apostrophe. So that's always the foot mark. So 5 feet, comma, 5 feet. If I wanted to do math in my head, I could do it in inches. So I could say this is 60 inches, comma, 60 inches, and I get to the same place. To me, it's a lot easier to do 5 feet, comma, 5 feet. Yeah?
If you were doing it in meters, would you put an M and cm, or is it?
It would default into whatever your default units would be. You wouldn't have, so let's say your default units were centimeters. It would default to cm. And you wouldn't have to type it. But if you wanted it to be in meters, you would do an M.
All right.
OK? Yeah?
So you're saying that for this, you could just type 60, 60 since it's defaulted in inches?
Exactly. So that would get me to the same thing. So because my default units are in inches, if I specify 5 feet, I would have to put the foot mark in. Otherwise, it would assume 5 inches. So, exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and say 5 feet, comma, 5 feet, and I'll hit enter. And I'll zoom out a little bit, and it creates that rectangle. And so when I select it in Rhino, it's going to highlight it in yellow. I'm kind of orbiting around so you can see that a little bit better. That's how I know that it has been selected. So I've drawn that. And then I want to create a surface, because right now that's just a set of lines. There's no actual surface on it yet. So if I create a surface, I have several options for creating a surface. We'll go through many of the options today. The first option would be to patch the surface. So I'll go up to the surface menu this time. Like I said, I vary how I access the commands so you can see that there's different ways of accessing it. And I will come down to the patch tool. So I'll go to surface and then patch. And this patch works with a contained closed polyline. So in this case, it's a line that goes all the way around. It's closed. I can patch that. The U and V spans don't matter right now, but I'm going to go ahead for practice and say 2 and 2. And we'll explain what U and V mean. It's just divisions of the surface. So we'll do 2 and 2, and I'll go ahead and say OK. And it's now created a surface for me. And the surface is designated with a little cross. And you can kind of see that there's a little bit of a surface there. Okay. Alternatively, like I said, I'm going to end up repeating myself many times here. I could select my rectangle, and I could type patch, and that would allow me to do the same thing. There it is. So we'll move on from the patch, and next we're going to use the rectangular plane tool. And so I'm going to come down here, and underneath this little rectangle with 4 dots on it, I'm going to click the little arrow. And that brings out a nested set of toolbars. And so this is something that's important. Every time you see a little arrow in the bottom right corner of a tool, it has more than one tool hidden underneath it. So we're in the surfaces, and I'm going to do the vertical plane here. Wait, all right, I'm double checking. Yeah, OK. If you did rectangular plane corner to corner, that's fine. You can just choose to make it vertical at that point. Doesn't matter. I was jumping ahead and just picking the vertical plane. So this is the rectangular plane corner to corner. This is the vertical plane, which essentially jumps you forward. Either way will get you to the same place. There it is. And it's going to ask me for the start of an edge. So I'm going to pick this back edge. And notice that when I move over that corner, I get a little white dot, and it says end next to it. That's because I have my endpoint snap turned on. And so with the endpoint snap turned on, as I get close to it, it jumps right to that point. We know we're right on that point. So that's important to do. If you're not seeing that jump, make sure you turn on your endpoint snap. Yeah, Paisley. Your toolbar on the left-hand side disappeared? OK, so you're going to have to reset the toolbars. There's no way of getting it back without resetting it and then closing Rhino and then restarting it. Real quick, you'll go to Tools, and then Toolbar Layout, and then click on the Restore Defaults button. And it'll say you're going to need to restart Rhino, so save your work and then close Rhino and open Rhino again. And it'll come back. OK, so back to the rectangular plane corner to corner. There it is, or the vertical plane in this case. I'm going to snap to that back edge. There it is. I'm going to move to this corner here, and it's going to again snap. And there it is. And you'll see that it starts to create, this time, a vertical plane rather than a horizontal plane. So I'm going up in this direction. So the next thing I need to know is the height. So it's asking me on my command line for a height. And I'll go ahead and press 5 followed by the apostrophe sign and hit enter. There it is. The other thing is after I've done that, it doesn't commit to it because there are 2 possible rectangles that I could want. I could want this rectangle, or I could want one pointing down. So it's asking me one more time to confirm which one. So it says choose rectangle. Do I want the top one or the bottom one? I just need to click on the side that I want. So there I am on this side. I'll go ahead and click, and there's my plane. So one more time, I'll do that again. I'll do the vertical plane. I'll go from this corner here, snapped, to that corner there, snapped. I'll go up and type my 5 feet. There it is. And I'll go ahead and choose that I want this rectangle. So I'll click one more time, and there it is. There's my rectangle. So I'm going to repeat the step to do the back corner on this side. So I'll come back to my rectangular plane, corner to corner, pick my vertical plane, and I'll go from this to this. And this time, instead of typing 5 feet, I can just snap to that corner because it's already there. And that then creates this. So as I orbit around, you can see that we're starting to create that shape that's on the front of your handout. And you can see that that is in 3 dimensions. OK, so that looks pretty good. Let's move on. The next thing that I'm going to do is to use the polyline tool. So it's right down from the arrow on the left side. And I'm going to draw a line from this corner here across to that corner there. After I've created that line, I'll go ahead and press Enter to finish the polyline. And that gives me a single line that goes from this corner to that corner. Once again, if I click on it, I can select it. So this brings up another good thing that Rhino does that's different from other programs. If I have 2 objects, let's say I were trying to select that line, and I click on it, and it's really close to trying to decide, do I mean the line or do I mean the surface behind it? Rhino will pop up this selection menu. And if you had lots of objects, it's really convenient. And essentially what I can do is I can scroll through and say, which one did I mean? Well, I really wanted the curve selected, so then I can select the curve. If it's in the middle where it's obvious what I'm selecting, so like here, it's not going to pop up that pop-up. It's because I was trying to select it over by an edge where I could mean the surface or the line. So it's just something that's built into Rhino that it does. OK, so I have nothing selected. I'm going to move on and use the surface from 3 or 4 corner points. It's down here. And it's I don't actually have to go into the arrow this time. It's just the default tool, surface from 3 or 4 corner points. I'll click on that. And it asks me for the first corner of my surface. That would be the first corner. I'll click. Second corner of surface, there it is. Third corner of surface would be right there. Fourth corner of surface, wait a minute, I don't have one. So I'm going to go ahead and just press Enter because I don't have a fourth corner. And there it is. It creates that surface for me. So one more time. I'll go to surface from 3 or 4 corner points. I'll pick the first corner, the second corner, and the third corner. And I'll go ahead and press Enter to finish. And there's that surface on the top. So now I have a lot more of my shape. That's good. And I'm going to move on to part 9, or step 9 on the little handout. And so in step 9, I'm giving you a precursor to something that we're going to do long term. It doesn't mean that you need to do it right now because it's really simple geometry. But I like to introduce this concept really early so you have an understanding of what the capabilities of Rhino really are. And so the next part in step 9, we're going to use something that's called derivative geometry, where I have some shape and I want to get something out of that shape. So in this case, I have a surface right here on the bottom. And I want a line from that surface that represents this edge. Now, in this world, I could very simply go to my polyline tool and I could draw a line from here to here. That would be just fine. And press Enter. That gives me a line. No problem. But imagine for a second that this was not just a straight edge. What if this was a piece of terrain that went up and down? What if I wanted that up and down curving line? I want to be able to get it from something I already have. So that's where this comes in. We're going to use the duplicate edge command. So it's available under curve, curve from objects, duplicate edge, or I could type in dup, D-U-P, edge, E-D-G-E. And you'll see that on the handout here under step 9. I know it's a little bit small. I use a different font to represent something that I've typed in. And I'll use that as consistently as I can throughout the semester. So if I'm telling you to type something into the command line, it'll be in that like typewriter, old school typewriter font, so that you know I'm actually typing it in. Same thing happens if you view the online instructions. So if I was here, oh, that's right, it's not written out in this. It's part of the actual exercise. Tutorial, sorry. So let me go here. There it is. Oh, of course I don't have it on this one. On the subsequent ones I will have it, I promise. Okay, so I'm going to type dup edge, or go up to my curve, curve from objects, i.e. derivative geometry, duplicate edge. Okay? It's going to say select edges to duplicate. It's that edge right there. I'll press enter, and it creates a line. That's what I wanted. I'm going to take that line, and I'm going to hold down Shift on the keyboard, and I will select this line right here that I created a little bit before. So I have both of these lines selected. So once again, first line, hold down Shift, second line, both of those lines are selected. With both of those lines selected, I can then move on to the loft command, which I can type into the key commands of loft, or I could go up to surface and then loft. And what a loft does is it takes two surfaces, or two lines, and builds a surface between those two lines. So you can see it's kind of a nice little twisting surface, like that. So once again, I'll do that. I will select the first curve. I'll hold down Shift, and I'll select the second curve. Now, sometimes you accidentally select something you didn't mean to. Rhino, instead of holding down Shift, will switch and hold down Control, and that subtracts from selection. So Shift adds to the selection, Control subtracts from the selection. The advantage there is if you're going along and you accidentally select a few things that you don't want, you can go back and deselect them in any order. So you don't have to go back through the same order. So I can go back and say, you know what, I didn't want those pieces, just by holding down the Control key on the keyboard. So I have those two selected, and once again I'll go back up to my surface command and I'll go to loft. Alternatively, I could just type loft. The loft options here, the defaults are just fine. We're not going to worry about those. We're just going to say OK. And that then creates the little twisting surface there. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the last piece using that surface from 3 or 4 corner points that we did before. There it is. First point, second point, and third point. I don't have a fourth point, so I'll go ahead and hit enter. And there's my fourth point right there. So I have all of those, and I've completed the shape that we're trying to make for this particular piece. We're going to get to rendering in just a second, but I'm going to go through the same process again. I'm going to make the same shape for practice. And for a lot of you, actually, I'm seeing computers, you're doing pretty well. You're picking up on it rather fast. I never know in a given semester how quickly you guys are going to pick up on things. So we'll learn, and I'll adjust teaching accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this again. I'm going to go back to my rectangle corner to corner. And this time I'm not starting at 0, 0. I'm going to start over here in space. That changes one thing, and that is how I type in the other side. So if I do that, I'm going to have to type in the @ sign first. So I'll do @ like the email sign, 5 feet, comma, 5 feet. We'll talk about what that means next class, so don't panic on that one just yet. So just @ 5 feet, comma, 5 feet, and I'll hit enter. That builds my rectangle. I went from that rectangle to a patch command, so I can type patch, or I can go up to my surface and then choose patch. Either way is just fine. Once I've created the patch, it's again 2 by 2 in the U spans and V spans. I'll go ahead and say OK. That gives me my initial surface. I'll move over into my rectangular plane corner to corner. But instead of corner to corner, I'll go ahead and pick the vertical plane. There it is. We'll start along this back edge. I'll snap to this corner and come across to that corner. Click one more time. Now I'm going up vertically. I'll type my distance or my height as 5 feet and press enter. Then I need to choose whether it's the one facing down or facing up. We'll click the one facing up. And there it is. I'll go back and surface from 3 or 4 corner points again. There it is. It's vertical. And we'll go from here to here. I should point out, by the way, that when I'm creating a command, here it is, and I look at my command line, it says first corner of plane, and then it gives me other options, 3-point, vertical, center, or deformable. I can just click on the word that I want. So in this case, I wanted vertical. I can just click on it. But there's also a letter that's underlined. So in this case, the V is underlined. That means I could just type V followed by enter on the keyboard. So I can click on it, or I could type V. So go ahead and click on vertical here. And my edge would be along the back. So I'll snap from this corner to that corner. And then we'll go up and snap to the top there. And that gives me that side. The next piece was to draw a diagonal line right here that goes from this corner across to that corner. And I'll press enter to continue. That was a polyline tool, which means it's continuous, so I can keep drawing from there. That's why I have to end it with an enter, so I can keep drawing any shape that I wanted, and I end with the enter on the keyboard. And by the way, it's enter or return. If you're using a Mac, it says return, not enter. Just FYI. OK, so I have that. We're going to do a surface along the top here. It's going to be a surface from 3 or 4 corner points, which is right here. We'll snap 1, 2, and 3. There it is. And I'll go ahead and press enter on the keyboard again, and that creates that surface along the top. I need my line that goes along the bottom of this edge right there. So I'll go ahead and go to curve, curve from objects, duplicate edge, or I could type in dupe edge. And I'll pick that edge and go ahead and press the enter key. That stays selected. I'll hold down shift and select that diagonal. There it is. And I'll go up to surface and then loft to create that twisting surface. Perfect. And then I need to fill in this triangle here. We'll do a surface from 3 or 4 corner points. 1, 2, 3. I don't have a 4th corner, so I'll go ahead and press enter. And there it is. So I've done those 2 shapes. I'm going to move on and deal with the rendering from here. This is what's required today. This particular shape, that's what you're going to be creating. But we're going to do a little bit of a rendering of it in V-Ray. I got to get your feet wet in V-Ray just a little bit for fun. If you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, don't worry. All is good. We're going to go back and work on just 2-dimensional drawing next class and just start basics. And then we'll go through and build upon what we're doing. I just like you guys to have a taste of where we're going with this. So I want to do a rendering. It's as simple initially as clicking the render button. So, I should have you confirm that V-Ray is your default rendering engine. So if you go up to the render menu and go down to current renderer, it should say V-Ray for Rhino. That's the idea. If that's the case, and it says V-Ray for Rhino, you can go ahead and click on the render button. It's the blue sphere up here in the toolbar, or you could type render. And when I do that, it's going to render out and show me 2 little red objects. The material is red plastic by default, so that's what you're seeing. Once I've done that rendering, I can go ahead and save. There's a little disk. Not that anybody uses floppy disks anymore, but there's a little disk icon for save. And you can go ahead and click on that and save it to your desktop or whatever. We're going to need this file to make our post. If you want to get a little more adventurous, you can change the materials. And so this is not required, but it's something that I'm going to present for those of you that feel adventurous and want to try it out. I'm going to go up to V-Ray. I'm going to go to the V-Ray menu here. I'm going to go to the material editor. And when I open the V-Ray material editor, you're going to see that I've preloaded some materials for you. These came with the file. I have gold, so you can see what gold looks like. I have the red plastic, which is the default. That's the one that you already saw. I have an orange porcelain. I have a shiny blue. I have a titanium. And I have an unlit candle wax. Okay, so I just picked some random materials for you. If you want to assign one of these other materials, you'll click the material itself, then right-click on the name and say Apply Material to Layer. Everything that you've done is on the default layer, so we'll just apply it to the layer here as default, and I'll say OK. And now I can go back and render it again. This time my spheres will turn into gold nuggets. Wouldn't I like to have these in gold? And there they are. Same thing. I could take any one of these materials and apply it to my layer. I'm going to apply it to default here. Now it's the candle wax, and we could go ahead and render that out. And there it is. Not the most attractive in the world. So I can play around with this, and I can create any of these materials that I want. If I wanted one material to be, or one of these objects to be one material and something else, it's as simple as selecting one of the objects and going back to my editor and then right-clicking, and instead of saying apply material to layer, I can apply material directly to the object by saying apply material to selection. So I could say that one is going to be the glossy orange, and this one here is going to be, let's make it the titanium. Apply material to selection. And then I could go ahead and render those too. And there they are. The titanium never shows up that well because it's reflecting so much of the background, and the background is all white. So we will get to a point where we create backgrounds and you have clouds, and in which case this will look a lot better. The materials are under V-Ray, Material Editor. There is also a V-Ray toolbar that doesn't load by default that I'm going to show you guys how to load up next class. So we'll get to that a little bit later on in the semester. So once I'm done with my rendering, so I'll do the render again, and I'm happy with it, I'll go ahead and click the disk icon to save it, and I'll save it onto the desktop. If you have your flash drive, of course, you could save it into your actual folder here. So this was exercise 201, there we go. And this is, it's not the fall, it's the spring. I'm still getting used to that. There it is. And I'll go ahead and save it. And now it's time to actually post that on the course website for today. For those of you that have already taken 135, you're well versed in how to post this stuff. Okay, I'm not worried about you guys. For those of you that haven't worked the course website, I'm going to walk you through how to make that post right now. So I'll jump back over to the course website here. And if I'm on one of the pages, I can go up to my black bar that goes across the top. This, of course, assumes that you're already logged in. And I can go to the New button and then choose New Post. Alternatively, if I was on the back end of the website, like this, I could go to Posts and then choose Add New. Either way, it will get you there. So in this post, I need to first give it a title. So we'll say this is exercise 201. There you go. There's nothing for me to post in the body. I have nothing specific to say. But this works like a standard Word editor. So just like in Word, you could type something in here, and it would show up on there. You have other tools like bullet points, links, etc. that are available to you. Again, I'm not worried about it because you're not going to be posting that much stuff. You're going to be posting just images for the most part. So at the very top here, it says this entry has no featured image. That's because you don't have an image yet. To add that featured image, you're going to scroll all the way to the bottom of this page, and on the right side, there's a featured image button. It says Set Featured Image. I'll go ahead and click on that, and it's going to bring up the media library by default. You guys won't have anything uploaded. I have stuff uploaded because obviously I've had an account for a while. I'll click on Upload Files right here, and this is drag and drop, so I can drag it from my desktop to here, or I could click on the Select Files and go to my desktop and choose the image. I don't want the Rhino file, I want the image file. So there's the image, and I'll go ahead and open it. It will upload it. There it is. Once it's uploaded, it has a little check mark by it. I can come over to the right side and say Set Featured Image. There it is. If I scroll all the way back to the top, that little warning is going to go away, saying you need a featured image, so it's there. This is my way of making sure you actually turn something in, right? You have to put an image there. One other thing left to do, and that's under the Categories section. You're going to check the box for Digital Tools for Architects, 136. You're going to go down, not in Assignments, you're going to go down to Exercises and check Exercise 201. And the reason that you're checking these boxes is because this is how you're designating that this is in fact Exercise 201, and it will then show up with all the other Exercise 201s. So once I'm done with those two, I'll scroll back up and click on the blue Publish button right there. As soon as I click on Publish, it's like turning in your work. You've gone ahead and published it. You can go back and edit or add to it if you want to afterward. Me as the administrator, I can see when you published it and when you made any edits to it or changes to it. So that's, I'm not worried about that. If you want to go back, you realize you spelled something wrong and want to change it, that's okay. No problem. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that. Once I've posted it, I can click on the View Post button here. And when I click on that View Post, I can see, yeah, I did make a post. It's a way of confirming that I turned it in. You could also go to the student work section. I could go to digital tools for architects. I could go to exercises and exercise 201. And when I do that, I should see, there it is. There's the post that I made. A few of you have already been making posts. I know you guys are well versed at this if you've taken my classes before. So you're going to post yours there, and it's going to show up in the list of all the rest of these posts. Okay? If you have a little trouble or you're a little bit worried about this post, don't worry. I'll come and I'll sit and I'll help you get your post done. After 2 or 3 of these posts, it becomes really second nature, and you shouldn't have to worry too much about it. Okay? So I'm going to let you guys work. A lot of you have already finished this, which is fine. You do not have to stick around today. If you're on the wait list, don't leave until I talk to you. Question? You have a question? Yeah, okay. Unless you guys have any questions, I'll let you work. I'll come around and help anybody that's struggling with any of this. Yeah? We're going to all do a comment next class together, one comment, and then it'll be a while before we do the actual comments. So don't worry too much about those. I'll remind you when it comes time. Any other big questions? No? Remember to bring your flash drive. Next class, you will need it. You'll start saving your work. You'll need it. The work that you do today with these little shapes, you don't need to save. We just need a JPEG image of it. You won't see it again the rest of the semester. All right.